Good afternoon. Today we are starting our next unit in our binder. We are on Po7. I can compare and order rational numbers. There are many methods you can use to compare and order those rational numbers. But first, let's review our comparing symbols. So when we see that little arrow that's pointing to the left, what do we call that? Okay. Yeah, that's our less than symbol. When the arrow points to the right, what do we call that, Amala? Greater than. And what do we call our two lines, Hadley? Yeah, equal to. So when we are comparing those numbers, we always read from left to right. I say that a lot, don't I? To right. We just did order of operations in my other class, so we work from left to right. I've been saying it a lot today. So we look at the number on the left, we compare it to the number on the right. So we know which symbol to put in there. I always like to think of my symbols as the hungry crocodile wants to gobble up the bigger number. So that open side is going to always be open to the bigger number to gobble up the bigger number. It's hungry, right? Crocodiles want to eat the bigger. So here are some things to try when comparing the values of rational numbers. First one, convert your values to the same form. If you have fractions and decimals given, we know how to convert fractions and decimals. Make them all fractions or make them all decimals. It'll be easier to compare them. When we have different types of numbers, it gets a little more complicated. Second thing, integers. Compare using a number line. A lot of us will say, I know 5 and 10, that's easy. We're going to be working with negative numbers too, friends. Those negative numbers, think about where it falls on that number line. So negative numbers get tricky. I like to compare them to my thermometers. I know the negative numbers in temperature are going to be a lot colder. The bigger that negative number looks, the colder it is. So it's actually smaller in number. So think about that number line, think about that thermometer as you're comparing those positives and negatives. With fractions, the first thing I always look for is, can I use the 0, half, or 1 comparison method? So if I have 7/12 and 4/11, I don't know off the top of my head, 12ths and 11ths, I don't know how that works. But if I look at 7/12, I know a half would be 6/12. So 7/12 is bigger than the half. 4/11, well, a half of 11 would be 5 1/2. So this is smaller than a half. Do I have to do common denominators and mess with that? No, I can just look, oh, I know the one that's bigger than a half is going to be the bigger fraction. So you don't always have to put forward extra effort with those fractions. You can, but if 7/12 is bigger than the half, which would be 6/12, I know that's bigger than 4/11, that's smaller than 5 1/2 11. Sometimes I like to do the least amount of work, so I like to look at the 0, half to 1. It's okay if we want to do common denominator, just a little more work that we put into it, totally fine, we get the same answer. So, another way to work with fractions is those common denominators. Remember, whatever we do to the denominator, we have to do to our numerator, and then we can compare those numerators once they have that same denominator. So if we had that 7/12 and 4/11, we could multiply the 12 and 11 together to get a common denominator. If I'm multiplying by 11 here, I would multiply by 11 here and get 77 over whatever that big number is. And if I'm multiplying 11 by 12 to get that big number, I would do 4 times 12, which is 48. And I would see That, oh, yep, 77 is bigger than 48. Same answer, okay? Sometimes we can't do that 0, half, and 1. It doesn't work out, so we just have to do that common denominator. If we are working on decimals, we're going to stack our decimals and add zeros to any empty digits. Compare the digits in the columns from left to right. You line up your decimals, and then you can look from going to left to right. Now, we had comparing decimals on the Math 6 review on this last test, so I know that you guys are pretty confident in comparing those decimals. If it starts to swim and you're like, oh, I don't know which one is next, that's when you stack them, okay? If you can't tell just by looking at it, do the stacking method. Any questions on any of those? All right, now, big warning sign. Do not just look at how far away from the denominator is the numerator. 2/5 is very different from 37/40, even though they are both only 3 away. 2/5 is less than a half, whereas 37/40 is almost 1 whole. They're both 3 away. That numerator is 3 away from the denominator, but when you have very different denominators, you can't just look at that. You have to go back to compare 0, half, 1, or do the common denominator. Make sense? Okay, so let's look at our work for today. Towards the bottom of our page, we have just comparing our integers. You're going to use the less than, greater than, or equal sign. So you're going to put it in. -7 compared to -10. What would I put? Baby? I'm going to put the greater than sign, because I'm always comparing the left to the right. -7 is a bigger number than -10. So that's all you have to do, is put the correct symbol in. Then we have ordering our integers from least to greatest. I did have somebody on the last test accidentally go from greatest to least. Always check, which order do I have to put it in? Least is the smallest number first. Greatest would be the biggest number last. So we're working with those negative numbers, least to greatest. Remember, negative numbers, looks like it's a bigger number, but it's really farther down on that thermometer. As the negative numbers look like they're getting bigger, they're actually getting smaller, smaller, smaller. That negative sign flips it on us. Okay. Any questions about those negative numbers? All right, let's look at our second page. We're going to stop working on, some of us are quickly trying to get work done. Let's stop and look at our second page. Using the less than, greater than, or equal sign, now we're comparing our decimals. We're given 2 decimals, which is the one on the left, greater than, less than, or equal to. Then we have putting those decimals, we have multiple decimals that we have to put in order, just like we had on that review part of our test. So put them in order from least to greatest. And then on the bottom, we've got our fractions. So comparing those fractions from left to right, is it less than, greater than, or equal to, using those different methods for the fractions. And on the very bottom, order the values from least to greatest. And this is where we'll see there is one that has decimals and fractions. You're going to want to put them all the same, either all fractions or all decimals. And we know how to convert those because it was just on our test. So make sure you convert them to the same so you can compare them. Your final answer needs to be the original numbers. So if you convert 0.45 to 45 over 100 on your answer, you're going to put it back to 0.45. And that's it. Any questions on today's assignment? All right, so you're going to quietly work on these. If you are watching this at home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Remember to see me if you have any questions. Do not forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day.